Anybody want to add to that? Did you want to add, or should we go on to the next? We can go on to the next. So before the next person speaks, I just want to recognize that in the Code Pink movement, we have some amazing men.
Yay!
It wasn't me.
And Jim Preston, who's going to ask his question, is one of them. And those of you who are going to be with us in the park tomorrow, look out for a beautiful three-wheeled bicycle chariot that he and his daughter just painted with a lovely saying that says, "Women say no to wars." So please, thank Jim for that.
Well, as always, it's an honor to hang out with my sisters here. And I just want to say this tonight is just such a wonderful expression of exactly what I think we want Code Pink to be, of reaching across the globe, across the conflicts, to try and change the conversation and learn more about what the conflicts are and how we can change the conversation and change policy and change people's minds to begin to talk about peace. Even as our Secretary of Defense has said, it's a lot cheaper to put diplomats on the ground than guns on the ground, right? And learning more about the Congo and about the Sri Lankan conflict and a variety of things is so important to us. And it's just wonderful to see everybody here. So sometimes people might accuse Code Pink of jumping all over the map, but this is exactly the kind of jumping all over the map that I want to do, is finding out what's going on here. It's wonderful to be here. And I recently read a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning by Chris Hedges, that I would really recommend to everyone here, that people talk about the money or the territory or one thing or another, but really there's a meaning people gain in their soul by dividing into us and the other, and we are the victims, and now we can create. Once we declare ourselves the victims of some atrocity against us, then we can do whatever we want to the other guys, because they're the bad guys, and that gives the meaning to the thing. And what we do with Code Pink is try and change the conversation. If that means get a big pink tricycle and ride it around the Capitol, well, let's do it, because the conversation's got to change, other than how can we kill other people, you know? But anyway, my question, what's my question? I don't have to have one. Why don't you? My question is, why doesn't everybody come out tomorrow and take a ride with us?
You bet!
Hi, I'm Ray. I work with Code Pink, and I just want to acknowledge, we're in the process of quilting together these little squares from all over the world, really. It's this global knitting project that will say we will not raise our children to kill another mother's child. Such a powerful statement from the Mother's Day Proclamation. And Elizabeth, one of our fearless Code Pink women from Tennessee, made another banner which says, "We will raise our children to treat another mother's child with kindness." Yes. There's such a powerful flip side, and I feel like Code Pink is flipping over Code Red and fear into love. And in that vein of thinking not only of what we don't want of the conflict, I want to ask about the resolution. And when you powerful, amazing women doing this incredible and much needed work in the world think about what peace looks like in the regions that you work, what does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? What does it have to include, I guess, is my question. I know it sounds very broad. Maybe there's a specific piece or a vision of hope that you could share with us. Thank you.
I'll start. I think for me in the United States, it means that we start talking about how militaristic our society is, and that we work against that, and that we work against recruiting our young kids at 12 and 13 years of age. Like in Philadelphia, we just went this weekend to close down the Army Experience, which is a multi-million-dollar video arcade in one of the largest malls in Philadelphia, where they're teaching 13-year-olds to go into helicopters and into tanks and to take those video arcades and start shooting people and kill them there. And if you get a good enough score when you come back at 17, we'll keep track of all this and we can get you a good bonus and get you into that military. And I think that's some of the, taking on some of the issues of, do we want our society to continue to be this very militaristic society? This society that feeds on war, that glorifies war. And having been in the military for 29 years myself, I think we do glorify the people that are in the military, and we glorify the wars that they fight. And I think we ought to really take that on as a challenge to say, we don't want to have child soldiers. We don't want this recruiting to go on in our junior high schools, our junior ROTCs, our Army experiences in the malls. That there are more military recruiters than we have diplomats in the United States of America. We've got to really change the way we look at it. And it really means shaking up our entire society, because we are a militaristic war society.
You asked what would peace look like in the countries that we work in, and for me it's Sri Lanka. And to me, when I imagine a peaceful country, I think of allowing 16-year-old Krishanti, who was raped and murdered by the Sri Lankan army, on her way to school. A peaceful country would mean that all 16-year-old girls can walk safely to school, holding their friends' hands, talking about their teachers and their classes without any fear of being raped by the army. It would also mean that a 60-year-old woman named Koneswari would not have had a grenade shoved up her genitals and raped and blown up from the inside out, and that she would be able to see her grandchildren grow and become professionals and productive members of society. So really, what I'm looking for is a political resolution, not a military solution to the war.
Thank you both for that thus far. What would it look like toward the Middle East is a big one, and I think between the two of us, three of us really tackle that one, frankly. All of us tackle that one. I think we need that. With respect to Syria, again, if I may use the story to give my thoughts on that. I visited Syria's Golan Heights have been occupied by Israel since 1967. And when I had the chance to visit Syria for the first time, along with meeting with Palestinian refugees and hearing their point of view and being reminded very clearly what occupation and war means in the region, the impact that it has, and I might add, it allows leaders to justify ridiculous spending on weaponry instead of devoting money to healthcare, to education, because of the Israeli threat. I can speak for Syria and say that that's the case, unfortunately. And that's a serious impediment to the realization of human development in Syria and the rest of the Middle East. That's a conclusion that the UNDP's Arab Human Development reports have outlined very clearly. And going back to Syria, I remember being on Syria's, a town called Quneitra on the Syria side of the occupied Golan Heights. And all that was separating me from them, Israel occupying Syria's side, was this really thin barbed wire. And I remember hearing the sound of the wind, and I remember thinking, wow, I could really just jump this fence. And what would happen if I broke through? Later people told me, now you don't want to do that, there are landmines actually, and that's not a good idea. But I remember thinking, how great would it be to rip up those borders and to be able to interact with others, Israelis, Syrians, have that reverberate throughout the region where Israel and her Arab neighbors make peace, a just and lasting peace that is predicated upon UN Security Council Resolutions 242, 338, and General Assembly Resolution 194. the one that guarantees the Palestinian right to return.